Well, I'm very glad to be here today at this time in November, this year after the new government has come into office, to talk to you about the construction industry. For the last 2 years, I've been tired of giving you a dismal picture of what is happening. Well, now things have changed. And things that have changed have moved from pure optimism of a new government of Prime Minister Modi, who is very clearly a capitalistic approach to development and a focus on development, investment and creating jobs, had changed the mood of the country and made it very optimistic that good things will happen. Well, that is nice at the level of optimism, but on the ground there are a number of realities that confronted the government and continue to confront both the government and the industry even today. But from a mere general sense of optimism, we moved on to feeling that this optimism is not just an optimism, but it is going to happen. A little more confirmation that things have started happening. And I give this from both a broader study of the infrastructure sector, in which we as a construction industry operate substantially, as well as, of course, you operate in housing and other areas as well, which is a home housing infrastructure. And also from the experience directly of Hindustan Construction Company in dealing with getting jobs and doing them. So when I look at the picture now, the policies of the previous government, which were directly related to infrastructure, or even indirectly related to infrastructure, like environment clearances, stoppages due to stopping, had caused a havoc in the whole infrastructure industry. And projects were stopped, like Lavasa, for example, not for environmental reasons, but for jurisdiction. You should have taken my permission, not his. So this kind of very arbitrary movement in the last government, creating policies, blocking things, had brought the entire infrastructure industry practically to a standstill. And it not just the government, a number of court decisions were also way beyond what was expected, stopping almost the entire mining industry of this country. So you therefore had a huge infrastructure clog, unable to repay its money. And this had a huge impact on the construction industry directly. Because construction industry continued to work under difficult circumstances, mounted up claims, and continued to do the projects with the help of borrowing money from banks. And as it became difficult under the regime of too much questioning in the name of corruption, for the fear of being charged, being corrupt, people would not take decisions and therefore stopped, delayed paying these monies to the construction companies, and the claims mounted right in front of our eyes to large amounts. This forced many of us to go into a corporate debt restructuring because that's the safest way. There are no concessions given in the corporate debt restructuring. Primarily, the same money is to be paid, the full interest has to be paid, only time has been changed to give back the money. And we expect that we can meet the time limits given to us because we think the money will come in a bit faster. And what doesn't come in faster, we will be able to do so by selling some assets, which too has not been easy, but we still expect to keep to targets both this year and next year. Now, when you look at the whole process, the government has now found that it has to, when they found that the entire concession agreements were blocked, that the whole road program would now get hurt if they don't come out with EPC contracts for roads. So pending rectification of the concession agreements and the procurement process for BOT projects, they started coming out with projects for roads. Similarly, projects in hydro and some of the other areas of 1,000 crores and above have started now showing up in the demand. For almost 3 years, government was not coming up with new projects. And now this has begun. It's a visible evidence that we see as we bid. So from this point of view, the process of now creating new infrastructure has begun. The process of stalled infrastructure, like take for example the courts. When the courts closed down, declared all those concessions, mining concessions as illegal, the government acted very swiftly in passing an ordinance, decided to rebid those, as well as opened up mining for private sector in addition to actual users, and are now processing. Of course, that coal will be on stream only after a year and a half. But the gap between their declared illegal and passing a new ordinance to get on with it was very short, so that it will at least happen in the next year and a half. And I think this is the confidence that has come. That is not just the general confidence that a stable government has come, a Modi personality leader is in office as Prime Minister, but actually on the ground, this movement is seen. As regards paying back the people are concerned, they are still in a state of shock as to the amount that they have to pay back to them. And then they are terrified how to deal with it, because the sensitivity of paying contractors has not still gone away. There is still question marks. Courts are still questioning. Activists are still demanding, why are you doing this? So there is a caution. And this caution is causing them a lot of trouble in taking some of the decisions. But as they increasingly find that things will not move till they do this, they will find solutions. Because I see an earnestness to find solutions. Nobody is dodging the problem. Nobody is saying, no, we can't do this. You are wrong. I'm sorry, this is not payable to you. This is not the language you're hearing now. The language you're hearing, it is difficult for us to do that. How can we just pay this on demand? What better ways can we find? Can we get some kind of a third-party reference that will make this happen easier? So there is a solution being sought to this problem. So I expect in the next few months we should be able to see some movement on this. But as far as the final investment program in a big way of both private and government sector to be underway, I still think it would be about another 6 months to a year. Because this is something you must understand in the infrastructure. When a government announces the project, it is usually 3 years after which it gets implemented. Because part of the projects announced will be really stalled projects going back into operation. Some old projects that were shelved being brought back on stream. This process will be a little faster. So the government investment cycle will begin. By the time it carries to actual construction job, it would be a year and a half to 2 years. So the way things are moving, even the best happens, it will still be a year and a half before you see distinctive investment in the infrastructure sector happening that we can all actually visibly see. Having said that, in the meantime, these projects have come on stream. So the hope is not just an optimism, it's actually started happening, but there are still obstacles, which they are sorting out. Then there are some non-direct obstacles, like you have infrastructure, you have, the clearances issues, of making payment issues. There are some other issues. I think we have a disastrous company now. It's not possible to function under this company law. Because at the moment, there is not a single company that can assuredly say that it is acting perfectly legally under the company law. Because every legal firm gives you 5 different opinions on the same question. So this is some area where they will need to correct considerably. And not just the rules of the company law, but also the act itself will have to be modified. And it has been very clearly told to us that for those of you who believe that it cannot be modified because they do not have a majority in the Rajya Sabha are wrong. There is no question of not being able to get that. The whole process is such that it would be easy to clear it through the Rajya Sabha, And even then, the Lok Sabha, when it passes it again, the Rajya Sabha has to clear it. It can't keep on rejecting it. So we should not have any such fears about the Act not being modified, but it's essential to be modified. Second is the land acquisition. While it is not visibly hurting anybody today, it is going to hurt the projects that will come on stream. Because in order to avoid the problems we faced in concession projects, as well as pure EPC contracts, the delays that happened because of non-availability of land, they clearly decided that they will not put a job out to bid unless they have 80% of the land. Now, under the easiest of circumstances, this was difficult. Now with this bill still very difficult. You know, the bill is so bad that even if you were to try and implement it sincerely, and everything happens absolutely on schedule and dot, it will take you about 66 months to clear by one land for one project. If you take the normal delays, it will go to 10 years. And then now put on litigation possible at every stage. So it's become virtually impossible, unaffordable to do that. So they will have to modify this if they're going to keep the promise of getting the land in place for putting out projects to build next year and the year after. So these are other obstacles which are not direct in terms of the day. This is nothing to do with Hydropower Corporation, National Thermal Power Corporation, none of the private sector companies that are producing power. This has everything to do with something completely different. That is clogging the investment line. And you must remember, as you all know, this thing about investment, this sort of conference, that for investment there's only one way investment happens, when the investor says yes. No or maybe means no, at least for the time being. So investment does not happen. So when that comes into question, we have to consider that the climate will have to improve considerably for the investor to see that the project will go on without implementation risk. I'm sorry, this has been a little bad asthma. So when we come back to feature, so these are some of the issues that have to be clear. Now we see if what has been recommended for environment clearances in the newspapers today is a far more systematic, fair and open approach to doing things. And they've even changed the name to Environment Management Agencies. So I think these are some good signs that are happening, but they will take some time to come into place. So I think broadly, the news from me, my reading of the infrastructure sector, is going in the right direction. The move from pure optimism to actually things happening is still a long way from real projects coming onto stream. Many other obstacles that have still to be removed, financial issues still to be resolved. For example, now Lavasa. We have finally got clearance for the Lavasa from sailing, which took about 4 months. But it's come too late for us to look at a possibility of going to market during this current year. So now looking to the situation that we will look at next year is that we will now take a call on when and how, because there are question marks till February. Some say before the budget, wait. Some say, no, you need not wait for the budget. There are a whole host of things which our board will consider with some thoroughness before deciding. So as Lavasa is concerned, this project was stalled. After it was restarted, putting the banking together has been quite a challenge. And having done that, there are many such challenges, but nevertheless, the project is back on its track. And it has got to go on in a certain way. Now, it has to be repackaged very well. And this is one of the reasons we are going to IPO, so that we can raise some equity so that its financial stability is ensured. Purely raising this equity will not do it, but it opens possibilities for other forms of investment. investment. And we would like to look at some investment for long-term debt, because these are all long-term projects. And I think this is another area which is clearly understood by now the finance ministry, that unless we create a debt market in the country, where infrastructure would require sometimes 10, 20, 30-year money, a lot of this is not likely to happen, because you cannot get that much equity. Even if money is floating around, that much will not go to equity unless there is a matching debt with it. So these are some of the issues that will come up. I see Lavasa law coming back on stream. It still faces a difficult period till it raises the money. But nevertheless, then it has got an impetus because the government for the first time of India has acknowledged urbanization as a necessity and a good thing for our country. They realize that 300 million new jobs have to be created. That's 15 million jobs a year. These kids are already born. They're just going to come to the job market every year like that. And when we talk of that kind of jobs, 300 million in 20 years, please understand, ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America, the largest economy, employs 135 million. So it's a simple arithmetic that we will need two large-sized, American-sized economies to accommodate these jobs. And these jobs can't be given in fields. This has to be given in urban centers. So urbanization, cities, has taken a big, big priority in the eyes of the government. They're not just any cities, but to even make them smart, so that they are more efficient, they're easy, more livable, and more easy to do work in. So this gives Lavasa also a big lift, because it's one of the first, because you're not talking about just brownfield cities, but even greenfield cities like Lavasa. So I feel that yes, this while a certain difficult period still exists, that we now see the possibilities of some of these things happening much faster. And given the fact that Lavasa sits in the wonderful, the very rich basin of Bombay-Pune region, I think that as soon as we start raising the money and as soon as we start taking leaps and bounds in this area, we'll be able to move very fast in that area. So broadly, if the government can grow the country at 10%, then the Indian industry promises to grow at 25%. It's as simple as that. So every time they add 1% growth rate, we can add another 2.5% to our growth rate. That's a simple equation. That's how it happened during the boom period. And India therefore has to look at how to create that investment climate. You can't get a better government to do that. Now the question is, will they do that? And how will they do it? And how fast will they do it? We are all ready. Become leaner after a bad period, so we are more efficient, more energetic to take on jobs. Now what we need is jobs, and I think they're on their way. Thank you.
Questions, please.
Sir, I want to check with you. So are permissions from the government coming much more quickly than they were on the ground?
Such permission?
Generally, when you are launching your construction projects, or approvals from the government are at the state government level, have the approvals picked up compared to earlier?
See, some primary decisions have been taken. They have to still take the whole process. For example, when they talk of a project, what are the permissions that are required, and whether all of them are in place. Now let's talk first of the simple EPC projects. This is a wonderful example available to the government at large and to state governments, is the Nuclear Power Corporation. Any job the Nuclear Power Corporation gives, all the permissions from environment down to the last permission is already in place. So when the contractors go there, they start work. But in other projects, some of those who want to put up a batching plant, you still have to take a separate permission. There are several permissions to be taken to store dynamite for blasting. So they are now trying to streamline the process by saying that all the permissions would be in place so that work can happen fast. Then in terms of getting land acquired, as I said, they still have a problem. But I think they know that they have a problem. What is good is they know what is blocking everything. They're solving the problem of the blockages at different speeds, depending on the complexity of the problem. But they're doing it. Well, difficulties are still about, and there are many things why I would like to criticize the government about for not doing it fast enough. Because I don't want to sound like a government spokesman here, but I genuinely see the difference.
Sir, I also wanted to check with you, in terms of states, where do you see more opportunity in terms of different state governments, and how well prepared are they for their funding plans for the infrastructure sector?
See, the real development when it comes to, other than very large scale infrastructure which the center is putting around the entire country, like a national highway program, or it's all the development is going to happen at the state level. So the state that creates the ease of doing business first and recognizes that it can't rely only on the infrastructure created by the government, but would have to create its own infrastructure as well. Because while there are national highways, there are state highways. And if the state highways are in bad condition, only relying on national won't work, and similarly. So rather than telling you which states, look for the states where the ease of doing business has got established, where there's a serious welcome to the businessman, where you actually see on the ground improvement from those who have gone and worked in those states. And I think people are seeing this broadly happen in Madhya Pradesh, as in Gujarat. There is a certain movement now in Andhra. It got stalled because of the recent calamity, but otherwise there it is. Chandrababu Naidu from the beginning has been known for this. Rajasthan. We hope that Maharashtra will now go the same way. I wish I could say this about Maharashtra. It hasn't been such a good place for doing business because it just wasn't moving on anything. The businessmen live here but are not really welcome here, which I hope now will change. So these are some of the states that are there. Then other states like UP, Bihar, which where a substantive improvement should come, are now watching. And I think there too, despite the facts that those governments don't look that great, are emulating those governments to see how they can improve some other things. But I would say from point of view of manufacturing, we as companies that are involved in building infrastructure, we have to go wherever it is being built. And it will be built where it doesn't exist, which will mean that it's not such a great state at the moment. But for those who are in manufacturing, we'll have to now look at those states that make it easy for them to do business. And I know for sure that Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat we know, but so is Madhya Pradesh, so is Rajasthan, very clearly. And surprisingly, even though it is not said, and everything is lost between the DMK and under DMK, and it's also another state in which a lot of manufacturing has come up. It seems to be at some level very manufacturing friendly state. I have not attempted to go there, but empirically it seems to have a large amount of manufacturing. So something they are doing here, it must be getting it right.
Good afternoon, sir. So, like with this government's plan on this developing 100 smart cities, where do we see ourselves, like, being a part of that? Can Lavasa also be one of those?
Yeah. No, what do you mean by part of it? See, to be honest, at the present level of the discussion in government, the definition of smart city is still to be resolved. It is in a way just as well they haven't got one definition. So various possibilities exist of what constitutes smart. Second is, I think we must remember that the cities will have to be created because we are talking about creating that many jobs. And Lavasa, well, none of the cities that are being talked about are actually part of anything in the central government, except Delhi, Chandigarh, and some such union territories. The rest are all parts of states. So I think Lavasa could be considered as one of the important cities, but it's a greenfield city. It's new. To become a full city is another 10 years. Yeah, 10, 15. Yes?
Sir, the government talks about the smart cities. So, if you were to look at a city to be created, what's the kind of realistic timeline that one should look at? For the first 10 cities to come through, would it be 10 or 15 or 20 years that one would actually look at? And
ultimately, the word smart city is going to center around ease of doing things in that city and the livability of that city. How is its transportation system? How much of digital media or what you call information technology is used in making these things happen? How is its infrastructure being managed? Is it clean and efficient? These are going to be various reasons. And if you drop 100 points that will make up a smart city, if you meet 20, 30 of them, you will still be falling into the category of smart. So I think this is where our whole approach has got to be. Whether it's completely greenfield. Now in Lavasa, if you take it's IT enabled right throughout, there's fiber optic right to every last home. There will be infrastructure management through IT. We have a joint venture with Wipro and Cisco to create My City technology that will be integrated management. That's one side. But having a clean transportation system within the town and city, green practices in building buildings, setting up the environment and enhancing it. These are all features that will come out. So no two cities may have the same features. But ease of doing things would be the similar, of some kind. So I think this is how it will pan out. There won't be 100% strict definition, but you will see visible improvement.
But timelines?
Well, as if Mr. Modi wants to house everybody by 2022, these cities better come up before that. They better smarten up before that. Well, all I'll say is it's difficult to say timelines, but if the government is very purposeful and it creates the right kind of policy, it will happen much faster than we think in our country has been possible in the past. This much is possible.
So, and do you think that Indian companies have an opportunity there, like companies like us, or do you think most of it would be done by multinational, companies which have experience in this area?
See, I think it must be understood that the volume of investment required to create that many jobs and the volume of infrastructure required is so mind-boggling that there is more than enough work for Indian and multinationals. Purely multinationals alone can't do it, neither Indians can alone do it. We will need every kind of investment and every kind of technology to make this happen. So I would not see it as a competition between the two. I would just say that the cake is big enough for everybody.
Coming back to the road sector, on the NHA, I think we're one of the companies which have been filing a lot of claims and trying to push it up to the logical end. So how do you rate the change of NHA's performance in the last 6 months? Do you see scope for further improvement?
As I told you, the NHA has moved from complete denial to saying that the problem needs to be solved. It has moved from saying we have the best agreements, the procurement system and construction contract as well as concession contract agreement, to say they all need a modification for it to be more workable so that what we saw happen will not happen again. I think governments and government agencies to admit that this change is required and that things have gone wrong is a very big thing, because that's the first step towards making the change happen. So if you're asking me anything more, this is all that has happened. And the change is underway. Now the change may not always be fully to your satisfaction, but it will be certainly better than what was there in the past, and things will start moving. See, the whole thing is such a work in progress that even noticing that it's work in progress requires to be in constant communication with these people, constantly watching, which through NCC, which is continuously engaged at various levels, from city development to very heavy infrastructure, we get to know. And so from the experiences we get and our studies, both combined, I give you my views. But you must remember that the entire infrastructure industry can be described as sick in the country. And I think the doctors have started administering medicine. The diagnosis has been done. So I think they are on the mend, but they're still sick.
I'll ask a question, sir, on behalf of everybody. Lavasa was modeled more on education, tourism and hospitality anchors. Have we continued the same business model for the next 5 years, or we are trying to sort of recalibrate our approach to selling Lavasa?
See, primarily it was, when you have a place like that, it is not and cannot ever be a center for manufacturing. Besides that, the Maharashtra government has not allowed us to do so. Even if they did, it is not somewhere we can do that. So, and we in India have not learned because of the government system. They have cities that have specialities of their own. Like you see, some cities in the US are education cities, some of them are technology cities, some of them are trading and financial center. The city decides what it wants to be and what it wishes to encourage. Lavasa has to have its peg as tourism, hospitality, leisure. This itself, the whole thing is about creating permanent jobs there. The more permanent jobs get created, the more the city is settled, and therefore the city incomes come up, which are the revenues that we are looking for. In addition to the sale of the real estate that happens as this goes on. Second thing about the cities, when you talk about this, is education. Because the facilities required for tourism, hospitality, leisure includes theme parks and all kinds. Both these are somewhat similar. And these are easier because we are all used to having these entertainment places like that, as well as schools a little further away from the main cities. Then there is a possibility of small businesses in software, not necessarily the huge software factories where 100,000 people are working, but research centers, training centers, etc. that can come up there. Then there is a possibility of some of the agri-business in the sense that there's a lot of agriculture in the area, like there's a bamboo factory today, similar such works can come up there. Biotechnology works can come up there. So, what sequence they would come initially, the whole emphasis will have to be on hospitality, tourism, leisure and education. However, some corporate groups have started looking at it at their center for research or center for training, so they would like to be there closer. Like some design companies are looking at that place so that, because there's a huge automobile industry within 40 minutes benefits of the place. So they would have an opportunity to serve. So let me tell you one which is at once a sad thing, but now a good thing. The closure of that unit by the environment minister has cost us not just one and a half year, 4 years. So we, in some ways, have just begun after the closure because it takes that much longer to get the momentum, particularly because during this period, as they stopped Ravasa, they killed the India story also. I remember at least 15 serious universities of America were interested in India. They've stopped coming to India. Now hopefully Prime Minister Modi's visit to America will certainly revive this again. So the revival of interest in India is also happening. So I think now things are going to be different. But we have lost 4 years, this is the point. The project is big enough and is valuable enough that 4 years at the end of next 5 to 10 years will look like a small additional cost, painful as it is today.
So one more question on the debt reduction plans. We were doing a lot of asset sales. So any status on it? How soon we can expect?
Well, it hasn't moved as fast as they would like. We still feel that our commitment to reduce the asset sale contribution this year, we will be able to still maintain. Next year also, I think we will. If the atmosphere improves, there are various ways to do this. And I'm quite hopeful that the commitments we have made, given a quarter here or there, we should be able to maintain. But it hasn't been easy.
Any more questions?
All my colleagues who want to buy are also in trouble, huh?
So just given an immense potential that India have on hydro side, nothing has moved in last 5 to 10 years. The issue that you said about environmental to start from land and everything, and with this new government in place and trying to revive Northeast and all that, do you think this thing can expedite? Because most of the project, including the government own project, are lingering for 5 to 10 years. So do you see revival, and you being a big player in this sector, do you see quite
Yes. I see a distinctive revival. I see us playing a big role in it also. If you're asking for the timing, it will take 18 months to 2 years. Because by the time they revive and it becomes construction for us, it is that much time.
Sir, what are the major issue there? Is that more a political issue, or is that an intent which is lacking from the government side?
The previous government had no connection to development. It seemed almost that they don't want development. They were focused on distribution. They were substantially run by NGOs from the National Advisory Council. Second is the scams that were exposed created a fear in the hearts of the decision makers in government that they don't want to take any decision. And therefore it stalled decision. Then the weakness of the government also didn't allow some of our border areas to develop the way they should develop. So lack of will of government, fear of execution by the bureaucrat, and at some level a determined policy of NGO distribution rather than development clearly killed the India story, and all the things that you're talking happened. This government is the opposite of that. It has clearly focused on development, focused on a strong foreign policy. It has got the government back to working, maybe not yet still to the speed we would like, but it certainly will. And I think this momentum as it gathers, the first year or two it looks slow, but it's rich benefits in the third, fourth, fifth year.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. I I will come back next year with better news.